back. This is What If Deku was Shirou Emiya, Part 8. Where we last left off, Deku had just won the sports festival, and him, Archer, Tosaka, and Ilya were all heading home. And I'm gonna say, on their way home, they're disturbed by several magical presences. And they can tell that they're strong. And, I'm going to say one of them is Kirei. Kirei Kotomine comes up and he asks Deku, if he's met the assassin class servant yet. And Deku says, yeah, I met him. What about him? And he's wanting to, ask Deku if he'd like to know how to defeat him. And, not gonna lie, that does pique Deku's interest. And he's asking, how would you know how to defeat Assassin? And he tells him, because in life, I fought him. And Deku's eyes grow wide and he's like, what? Because even though he knew all about Kiritsugu's past, he didn't know that Kiritsugu fought Kirei Kotomine. Because there was never any actual files on that. There was nothing he could research about it. He didn't even know that Kiritsugu participated in the Holy Grail War. Because none of that was documented. And so, Kirei, he calls forth his servant, and he says, as a sign of solidarity, I'll reveal to you my servant. Come on out, Lancer. And, Lancer starts walking out, and Deku immediately realizes who Lancer is, and he's like, your servant nearly killed me. And Lancer says, sorry about that, I thought I actually did kill you. And he's like, well, you would have, if it hadn't been for Tosaka saving my life. And, Kirei, he's like, well, he was only acting on my orders. You were starting to get a bit more of a nuisance than what I'd really consider that I'd like to keep. Plus, knowing that you were studying Kiritsugu's notes, you would have eventually grown into a force that surpassed Kiritsugu Emiya, and that was something I couldn't allow. And he's like, so now, you gonna kill me? And Kirei's like, oh no. There are things that's about to happen that I'm gonna need you for. And he's asking Kirei, what the hell is he talking about? And Kirei tells him, well, for one, there's 2 Holy Grail Wars commencing at the same time. And everyone is just like, what? And they're like, yeah. And Kirei tells him, to end it, we're going to need that card you sent to the clock tower. So you might want to make a call and tell them that you're going to need it delivered back to you. And Deku, he's just like, a card again. And, Kirei, he's like, should we go to your house? so we can sit down and talk about this, or do you plan on us talking about it out in the open? And Deku says, well, it'd be a problem if we were ambushed out here. Sure, we'll go to my house, but if you try anything funny, I'll kill you and your servant where you stand. And he's like, you're gonna tell me everything. He's like, I want the full truth this time, nothing hidden. And Kirei promises he'll be 100% truthful with Deku. And so, they're actually going, and Kirei is walking behind them, and he's just wondering. He's thinking to himself, how far has Deku come since Lancer fought him last? And Lancer, he's just staring down Archer. He doesn't like the way Archer feels. Having fought him before, he still can't get a good read on him, but he doesn't like the fact that he can really react to him, since Lancer is a lot faster than Archer. Anyway. And Archer can tell, and he basically, without even looking, he says, Lancer, I'm gonna need you to stop staring at me. After all, I mean, I am flattered by the gesture, but I don't swing that way. And Lancer scoffs and he makes a remark. He's like, trust me, if I were interested in guys, I would not be anywhere near interested in someone as ugly as you. And Archer scoffs right back at him. They eventually make it to their house, and, Deku, he leans down to Emiya, and he tells her, be ready to summon Berserker if the need arises. And, she says, okay, I will. And Kirei's basically saying, look, before we go all into the whole pretexture of, me telling you about Kiritsugu, Emiya, and all that, we're going to need a seventh servant. We need the Saber class servant here. It's the only way we're going to wrap up both Holy Grail Wars in any semblance of time. Deku breathes in, and he exhales, and he's like, okay, where are we supposed to find a seventh master? And, Kirei looks at Deku and he's like, I'm looking at one right now. And Deku's confused. He's like, what, you want me to become the seventh master? And Kirei says, in the short, yes. And you don't have a choice. Deku exhales. He's like, fine. If I summon this servant, well, it can only help me, so why not? And he realizes he doesn't have a relic. And he asks, okay, what am I supposed to use for the relic? And, Kirei, he looks at Deku, and he basically tells him that Kiritsugu used Saber and had her relic on him at all times, so it's not likely that he would just part with it. So as long as it's in the house somewhere, then, you should be able to summon her. He's like, just give it a try. If it doesn't work, we'll find you a relic. And Deku, he's like, alright, fine. So he goes into the garage where he knows the circle is, because Deku's not dumb. He searched all throughout the house. But he's just thinking that, oh, the relic, if it is here, might be a hidden compartment somewhere or anywhere, really. And, he does the oath, asking if the servant heeds the Grail's call, then to come forth. And lo and behold, he gets a reaction. And Deku is surprised as fuck. And he's like, what? And sure enough, the command seals form on Deku's hand. And out comes Saber. A pale-skinned woman with golden eyes, blonde hair, and is dressed in armor. He's like, I thought you were a saber. Where is your sword? And he sees that it looks like she's holding something, and she slams it to the ground and sees that there's an indent in the ground. And she says that she's using wind magic to make it transparent. And he's like, oh, because if someone were to see it, it would give away your identity, right? And, Saber basically says, yes, of course. And Deku says, alright, follow me. Time to introduce you to everyone. And, she's asking, wait, before we go, I must know, what is my master's name? And Deku, he looks back at Saber and he says, my name is Izuku Emiya. And she's says, Emiya. And he's like, yep, the son of Kiritsugu Emiya. And Saber looks shocked, and she's just like, you're Kiritsugu's son? And he's like, yep. He's like, let me guess. You remember my dad. After all, he was your previous master. And she's like, well, yes. And he's like, well, then you're gonna get a real kick out of hearing the explanation behind everything. And you could provide more information and tell if that damn priest is telling the truth or not. And she hears the word priest and she's like, what? And Deku just says, it's easier if you just see with your own eyes. Come on, Saber. So Saber is starting to walk with Deku, and, I'm going to say, since Deku is a better mage than, Shirou Emiya is in the original, that Saber is summoned to her maximum potential and has a steady mana source. So she is able to send her sword away and change into actual different clothes, or just disappear for a while. So, yeah, just putting that out there. They go, and, Deku, he enters, and Kirei says, did it work? And Deku's like, yeah, it worked. And he's like, I thought it would. And, Tosaka sees Saber, and, she's like, well, I did know that you were going to be summoning Saber, but... And Tosaka's like, what is Saber's parameters? And, Saber basically tells her that she is an A-class servant. And Archer, he actually says, wow, she's actually a class above me. And Lancer's like, oh, really? And Emiya's like, yes, after all, I'm only B class. And, you know, Saber looks and asks, what servant is he? And he says, I'm Archer. And, he doesn't really feel like hiding his name from Saber. And it's about to come out since they're sharing information with Kirei. And he says, my name is Heroic Spirit Emiya. And Saber hears Emiya again, and she's just like, what? Archer explains that he is the future self of Izuku Emiya, the, heroic spirit that he becomes in the future. And Saber is just like, so you were summoned to a point in your past? And, Archer says, yeah, basically. Even Lancer is dumbstruck at hearing that. And, he's just like, well, damn. And Kirei, he's kind of shocked to hear that, Deku's going to become a heroic spirit at some point in time. And so, he starts explaining, and he says, well, I guess I should start from the beginning of the previous Holy Grail War. And, he does. He says that there were 7 masters in the previous Holy Grail War that caused the Great Calamity 10 years or 11 years ago. And Deku's just like, and he's like, among the participants were myself, a man named Kiritsugu Emiya, a member of the Mado family, and of other note, Rin Tosaka's father. And he's like, there were others, but they really weren't of no consequence. The people I mentioned were the main players. And he looks over at Saber and says that she was one of the servants in play back then. And Lancer is actually kind of shocked that, this is Saber's second time having to fight Kirei, and is actually kind of laughing about it, like saying that it's just gotta be a bad joke that, Saber keeps getting summoned back to this time period. And Saber basically just tells him to shut up, and, she looks at the spear and says, oh, you're a hireland's child of light. And that shuts Ku up, and he's just looking, trying to analyze Saber to deduct her true, name, and he's just like, who are you then? You already know his name and my name. Who is yours? And, Saber basically says that unless her master uses command seal to make her say her name, she is not about to give up the advantage she has over the both of them. And, they all eyes turn towards Deku, and Deku's like, what, I'm not telling her. And he's like, that wasn't part of the deal. And, Kirei, knowing that Berserker is just a call away, that there's an archer and now a saber right there, along with a powerful master in Deku and the prodigy Tosaka and Ilya, along with whatever potential Sakura could have. He's not really wanting to test his luck at the moment, even though he does have a trick up his sleeve, like an ace trump card that he could use. He continues on, and he says, as much as they fought and all the way down to the last straw, there were the only two that were left remaining was himself and Kiritsugu Emiya. Even though Kiritsugu had life-threatening wounds, he wouldn't concede and would not fall, and ultimately ended up winning the Holy Grail War. And Deku's like, huh? And Saber, she starts to chime in, and she's like, but that is when he betrayed me and the Holy Grail. And Deku's like, betrayed? And Saber tells him, in the midst of having the Holy Grail right there within our hands, he used all of his remaining command seals to have me destroy the Holy Grail with my noble phantasm. In doing so, caused the destruction that occurred, and I was sent out of this world. And, Deku is shocked to hear that, and Kirei's basically just like, that is the truth. That is what happened. But Saber chimed in and says that out of all the opponents in the Holy Grail War, Kiritsugu thought of the priest as his most formidable and trickiest opponent, and that underestimating this man under any circumstances would be a bad move to make. And so Kirei smiles about that, and Saber asks, but why is all this talk about Kiritsugu anyway? And Deku tells her, he's been summoned into this timeline as assassin. And Saber looks shocked that not only is her current master's future heroic spirit summoned to this timeline, but her previous master's heroic spirit form is summoned to this timeline as well. So she asks, okay, so where is the present Kiritsugu? And Deku says, there isn't one. And she's like, he's dead. And, Deku says, he died some years ago. It's been quite a while since he's been alive. And, of course, Saber, she's like, I'm sorry for your loss. But she's kind of happy that she doesn't have to deal with multiple Kiritsugus. She already has to deal with Kotomine, her new master, who's kind of probably got the same thinking style as Kiritsugu in her head, and his future self is here, and she has to fight her previous master as well. Saber's really overwhelmed at the moment. And that's when Deku tells her the even more shocking news, that there is actually 2 Holy Grail Wars commencing at the same time. And she's like, what do you mean 2 Holy Grail Wars? That should be impossible. And Deku points to Kirei Kotomine once again, and Saber demands an explanation. And Kirei says, well, that was still well within part of the deal, so very well, here we go. And he says, basically, there's this mage family called the Einsburns, and they've been trying to figure out a way on how to summon the power of a servant, but not bringing them physically into the world, but using their power for themselves and not having to use the servant's personality. And so Deku, he's basically just like, he's like, could we use that to our advantage? And Kirei says, well, he does have a fate card. And he pulls it out and he says it's an archer class card, but it's a complete and total fake that he couldn't get to work. He throws it over to Deku. Deku holds it, and something is telling him to hold on to this card. It's gonna come in handy somehow. So Deku tucks it away in his pocket. And so Kirei, he goes on, he's like, they've been trying to figure out that way, so that way they could hold their own Grail War as well. But one where they particularly select the, competitors. Ironically, they use dolls that can have souls bonded to them. And in that way, they don't lose any of their ranks, but they can potentially create a holy grail that they can hold on to themselves and make their own wishes and desires come true. And he says, obviously, you would need all 7 cards to do such a thing. And Deku asks him, do we know how many cards they have now? And, Kirei says, I'm only going to speculate here, but I'm thinking that they can only have either 2 or 3 with them at the current moment. And Deku's like, okay. He's like, well, we got 1 over at the clock tower, so at least that's 1 that, they won't have the chance of getting. So that leaves 3 or 4 more to have to hunt down. That way we can make the fight on our terms. And Deku's basically, he's thinking, how is the best way to tackle this? There's 2 Holy Grail Wars, and they both need to be stopped. And he's thinking, and he's like, okay, how do the Grails manifest? And this is where things take a kind of bleak turn for the worse. And he basically says that the Holy Grails have always been summoned using a human sacrifice. And he's like, Deku's eyes go wide and he's like, what? He's like, to be more precise, a human is turned into the Holy Grail. And the servants themselves are turned into the liquid that fuel the Holy Grail. And when there is only 1 servant left, That is the one who can hold the Holy Grail and make their wish. And Deku can't believe what he's hearing, that the Holy Grails are something that despicable and almost demonic. And even Archer is shocked at now because he never knew how the Holy Grails worked. Like, he was never supposed to even participate in Holy Grail wars. So he never knew how the Holy Grail wars were even supposed to really go. And in his timeline, he never really learned about the secrets of the Holy Grails. And so Deku says, do we know who the two sacrifices would be? And Emiya she peeps up and she says, well, I would be one of them. And Deku is shocked and he's just like, what? You? And, she's basically says that she's a half human, half homunculus hybrid. And that her mother was the previous Holy Grail. And that she was using Deku as protection to make sure she wouldn't turn into the Holy Grail. And Deku he's speechless at this. And he's basically just like, okay, well, you are my sister, and I'm not going to lose the only family I have left to becoming a Holy Grail. So your wish is going to come true. I will protect you to the fullest extent of my abilities. And Kirei is actually really happy to hear that because he's like, good. We have one of them here, secured already. And he's like, but the rest of them, they're not gonna be able to, wait that long before they want to take the Holy Grail into their own hands, especially now since they know the seventh servant has been summoned. And Deku, he's just like, what? And Kirei tells him, your nights are about to get a whole lot busier now. And he's just like, fuck. Kirei tells him, well, let's see what we have now. We know the identity of Assassin, Lancer, Archer, and Saber, and Berserker. He says, all we would have to really find out now are Rider and Caster. And that's when Deku tells him he already took care of Rider. Well, Emiya did. The same time he got that card, they took out a heroic spirit with pink hair that was called Medusa, and she was the Rider class servant. And Kirei's like, excellent, so that just means we have to find out who Caster is and where Caster is at. And, this is like, that's true, but how? And that's when Tosaka kind of peeps up. She's like, well, at my school, I've been hearing these weird rumors about a temple that this woman magically appeared out of nowhere one day and started living there with them. And Kirei is looking pleasantly surprised, and he's like, good, that must be where Castor's located. And he's like, we should be able to move out on her tonight and wipe her out. And he says, even if Assassin interferes, we should easily be able to take him out as well. And Deku hears that, and he realizes he's gonna have to kill his father to end this. And that is going to be his biggest test of all. And, you know, he's like, okay, so that handles one Holy Grail. What about the other Holy Grail? And that's kind of where Sakura chimes in, and she admits that she thinks that she could be the second Holy Grail. And Tosaka's eyes just widen and tears form, and she's like, is that why you came to me after all these years? For protection? And Sakura says, yeah. And Deku promises Tosaka that they'll look after Sakura the same way they'll look after Ilya. And Tosaka's like, how? He's like, I'm gonna have Saber watch both of them at all times, and Berserker will be there too, so they should be able to protect Ilya and Sakura with Saber and Berserker, the two strongest servants that they have. And Lancer, he's like, the two strongest, you say? And Ilya's like, that's right, Berserker's the strongest one there is. And Lancer is just like, oh, so how is Saber stronger than me? And Deku's like, trust me. I believe that Saber is stronger, and even if she wasn't, I don't really trust you around those two anyway. Who's to say you wouldn't just try to kill them? And Lancer's just like, well, obviously I wouldn't. After all, I try not to kill women, much less hurt them. And so Deku's just like, still, I don't trust you yet. And Kira is like, so, what is our plan of operations? And Deku says, rest up tonight. I got school in the morning. And tomorrow night, we're heading for the temple. And we're not going to hold back. And Kirei says, oh. And he's like, and Deku tells him, we're going to end this first Holy Grail War immediately. And then we'll focus on the second one. And so, Kirei, he's satisfied with that. He gets up and he leaves with Lancer. And they head back to the church. And Deku tells Saber that she should basically just settle in for the night and just get herself comfortable with the place. He's going to bed. And that's the end of that day. And that's where I'm going to leave it off for today. And, you know, sorry that there wasn't as much action in this episode. I just really wanted to build up the story to it, you know, a bit more. But if you did enjoy, push the like, give me a thumbs up if you really enjoyed the video. Comment if you have an opinion or just any recommendations or any feedback at all. Subscribe if you're new. Share the video with your friends, family, anybody else that you think would be interested in this. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.